The Gigantomachy. The world is asleep. The skies are silent and dark. For Selene has finished her course across them, and now prepares to slumber. And Helios, the sun, has not yet taken to his chariot and set forth to herald the break of dawn. It is in this moment of tranquil stillness, when all the world dreams, that marks the terrible beginning. Or more accurately, a continuation of that which most thought done. For out of the fertile plains of Greece, a figure rises from the very soil. She, who is the world, personifies, taking a physical form for the first time in an age. Gaia, the first being born into reality by chaos, a primordial force. She is the mother of the Titans, grandmother to all. Slowly, she scales the face of Mount Othrys until she reaches its very summit. There she finds the burnt and blasted ruins of a place that had once been the residence of a ruler of the universe. For this ruin was once the home of Kronos, the king of the Titans. From here, he and his brothers ruled and ruined the universe. For they were cruel and capricious, unjust and unwise. They could not be permitted to remain unchallenged. They could not be permitted to despoil that which chaos had wrought into being. Yet now, Gaia stands atop this great mountain and looks across the plains of Thessaly. There in the distance, the residence of those who burned and blackened the ruin where she stands. Not the mountain, which is a part of her very fibre, but that which stands on its precipice. There she espies the palace of the gods atop the summit of Mount Olympus, the home of the god she trained to defeat Kronos, the Bastille of Zeus and his Olympians. And, despite that none can hear her, none will mark her advent or this moment, she speaks. She does it for herself. She does it to hear her cause, to vocalize the accusations she makes, to bring the full force of her will unto this final decision, one she knows she has already made. Yet she knows that if she begins this again, if she unleashes the fires of fury, she cannot take them back. Once set upon, her course may well consume the universe. Knowing she holds the fate of all in her palm, she speaks.
I come here to pick at old wounds that will never heal, to make them bleed like rivers again, so I might gain the strength to do what I must do, so I might gain the spite to do what must be done. I remember him when he was young, when his eyes were bright and beaming, when he was still capable of love, his hair like clouds, so much like his father's, his smile so wide, so open. My little Kronos. The others forget they do not forgive. It was he, little Kronos, that alone of all our sons, all our daughters, all those in existence from highest to lowest, it was only Kronos who loved me, for it was only he who would stand against his sire. It was only Kronos who had the courage to strike. He did it for me. It changed over time. He changed over time. But in that instant, in that moment, little Kronos was the only one who cried when he saw how I was used by the king. It was only he who dared to be angry with the mighty Uranus. And it was to little Kronos that I was forced to turn. The youngest of our children, Kronos took the weapon I forged for the purpose, and he struck down his own father for me. And he took the tyrant's throne, as none dared defy the man who had slain the king of the universe. I had such high hopes. I thought this would be a better world, a kinder world. Yet, in time, the blood of his father won out. And within mere millennia, the father aped the son, and Kronos became as Uranus. His court was cruel and capricious, his brothers bellicose and brutal. He raped his wife, he consumed his children. He was every bit the horror his father had been. In so many ways, he was even worse. And so, I had to turn to another. I had to search again for one who could and would stand against a tyrant. And in Zeus, I thought I had found him. I received him from his mother, Rhea. I succored him, I raised him. I trained him, I armed him. And I sent him to the most terrible war of all time. The battle between the Titans and the Olympians. The Gigantomachy. A confrontation so destructive I near passed from existence. Yes, even I, the world, have my limits. Yet, the golden cub, the young lion, Zeus, hath proven that he is of the same metal as his sires. He hath become an unworthy king. Grandson, I now charge thee thus. Zeus, you have betrayed my sons, the Gigantomachy. Claiming to free them in your pact, you have cunningly chained them to the very gates of Tartarus still. It matters not that they are guards, not residents. They reside still deep within my bosom, unable to walk the world, unable to feel the touch of the sun on their faces. Zeus, you have slain the Titans, not merely their king. In your war, you claimed you would be clement. Yet when the time came, the head was not just taken from the snake. You damned them all. Pallas, Perses, Hyperion, Atlas, Cous, Creus, Aegean, Iapetus, and so many more. The entire male court was hurled into the pit. Zeus, you have cursed those who you should have defended. The mortals now hunger, suffer, starve, and despair. This foulness unleashed upon them? For accepting a gift from a god when all was taken for others, and to set the snare so spitefully, to make it the hand of Pandora who unstoppered the trap? It was all so unnecessary. And what you did unto Prometheus, what you do unto him until this very night, shameful. And finally, the last, a single word, a staggering accusation, one you know to be just, a name. Metis. How could you? After you had heard from Hera and Hades, Hestia, Demeter, even Poseidon, how they were consumed by their father, how they existed in darkness, unending. How could you? Zeus, hear me now. I name thee a demagogue. I name thee traitor. I name thee tyrant. And I, Gaia, the first, mother of all, I shall humble thee. As I scream this last, from this place, into the skies, into his domain, I know he will hear me.
Across the plains of Thessaly, above the clouds ringing Mount Olympus, in my very palace. My sleep is shattered. I sit bolt upright in my marital bed. Instantly, the gossamer drapes before the window thrash back as a mighty gust of wind blows through. And it is then that I hear her proclamation. I hear her words howled as though she were at the very foot of my bed.
Zeus, hear me now. I name thee a demagogue. I name thee traitor. I name thee tyrant. And I, Gaia, the first, mother of all, I shall humble thee.
I clutch at my chest, panting in panic. I gasp at air like a miser. I look to my side, and there she is, my beauty, my love, my queen. Hera. She sleeps so soundly, a half whisper of a smile playing at her lips. This is one woman at least that I have made happy. I do not wake her. I slip from my bed. I charge to the window and throw myself out of it. I take the form of an eagle, and I hurl myself as fast as I can through the skies, in the direction of Mount Othrys. Yet, as I approach, I cannot get close. I am Zeus, king of the Olympians, Lord of the universe. Yet still, I dare not. I circle the mount and look down on the terror there. A small figure bent over, but I would recognize her anywhere, in any guise. It is she. It is grandmother. It is Gaia. Stood exactly where my father once stood, looking up at me, as Kronos had done so long ago. Yet, as I turn to wheel and descend, to discuss, to make parley, to talk, it is then that I witness the darkness move all around her, as towering colossal figures climb to the summit to ring around her. They, too, now look up at me, and there is no love in their eyes. The Gigantes, the giants. Gaia has mustered them here. Once, at her behest, these beings assisted me. They allowed my victory over my father. If we had not taken Olympus, had not raised our banners, we would never have gathered the support to win that war. If we had not the Gigantes to defend its slopes, we would have been crushed by Apatus and his armies, the forces of my father. Yet now I must face them by the river Styx. I do not know if I can beat them. I fly. I rush toward my home. I must raise the alarm. I must gather every last god and goddess, for there will be no allies in this war. No nymphs, no dryads, no hamadryads will raise blade against the grandmother. We must do this alone. And I am not sure we can.
I do not tarry. I strike. I am ready. Zeus is not. I sang to my Gigantes while they slept, as I once did for Zeus. I now did for myself. I summoned them. I raised their hackles. I girt them for war. I reminded them of their power, that even the true king, Kronos, how his forces fled from their onslaught. I remind them that Zeus used them as his last line of defense. I remind them how mighty they are, easily the equal of the Olympians. For are the Gigantes not born of Gaia, the world, of the first generation, the primordials? Yet I do not send them naked to the fray, for my grandson's forces have mighty tools and weapons of war. Thus do I, maker of all flowers, trees, and roots, create a herb by which they will be magnified, augmented. With this root, they will never permanently fall, even to the blades and bolts of Olympus, and I set them out to war. Aegean, Agrius, Alcyoneus, Aloede, Antaeus, Argus Panoptis, Cacus, Clytius, Enceladus, Ephialtes, Eurytus, Gengenes, Hippolytus, Mimas, Maimon, Orion, Pallas, Porphyrion, Talus, Titus. These and more do I hear marching down Mount Othrys towards their targets. The fathers of the universe have been a ghastly bunch. From Uranus to Kronos to Zeus, tyrants all. The same line, the same crimes. The last, Zeus, my greatest hope, my greatest failure. I thought I had opened his eyes to beauty, honesty, to virtue. Yet, he is the greatest disappointment of all. Trained by my own hand, I poured my hope into him. Yet, the blood is too strong. The same line, the same crimes. So if the kingdom is so evil, where is it writ that the universe need bow only to a king? Where is it writ that the heavens and seas and underworld cannot bow to a queen? I am the world. I was the first thing spawned by chaos. I am its beginning and end. And I? For no lack of candidates, for no lack of care, for no lack of diligent counsel, the kings have failed. Thus I, Gaia, will rule!
They do not come at Olympus precipitously. They fight as I once did. They strike at my power base first. They come to weaken me and mine before the battle. But they are not intelligent enough for this. Gaia is controlling them, guiding them directly. I now stand against the person who trained me. I see her foils and feigns immediately. The old ways. Mighty Alcyones and Porphyrion strike out and capture the herd of the sun, the cows of Helios. Many Gigantes break off and siege my holdings across Greece, yet half again remain to hold me in place. They stand on the plains of Thessaly, always threatening Olympus, but never directly assailing us. They bombard the approaches of my hearth with boulders as large as chariots, with burning oaks as tall as the hills. I am pressed to withstand their projectiles. I and other Olympians stand at the approaches and fire down our own darts and bolts. The Gigantes back away, out of our range, but theirs is the greater, so the missiles continue. As predicted, the court is in panic. Many remember all too well the horror of the Gigantomachy, and again, as predicted, none of the minor gods will stand against the grandmother. My siblings are with me, even, surprisingly, Poseidon. I so wish I could trust him. He does stand, yet he brings none of his subjects to the fray. It is gratifying, however, that the Titanesses also stand. Of all my court, it was they I worried of the most, for they are the daughters of Gaia, and I had concern that they still despised me, for the defeat and constraint of their husbands and sons, yet they do not turn against me. And, as they never did before in the Gigantomachy, this time they take the field also. And my heart fills anew with confidence as I see the assemblage of my court. If any of worth were truly eyeing my crown, then this will be the time for them to strike. If some betray me, as my father Kronos experienced, then this war would be very swift and very one-sided. Yet, despite my fears, they are with me. They come with me to fight against the Gigantes. Yet, the one I most need at my side, the one I trust the most, he I must hold to another task. For my brother Hades is needed in the underworld. There he closes the doors of his realm and stands vigil. If Gaia were to sneak past him and coerce or cajole the Hecatonachres to her side, there may be no force in the universe that could face both they and the giants combined. Hephaestus also frantically works the forges. He drives his assistants so hard that they cannot even think. For to think now may make them change their loyalties. Yes. On the side of the grandmother are lesser Cyclopes, but Arges, Brontes, and Steropes remain with us. They will not take the field. Good. A small blessing at the least. And so, when we had as many of our kind present as we thought would come, we went down to grapple with the Gigantes. They were as they had always been, towering mountains of sinew and strength. They were frightening in appearance, with long hair that swept down from their heads and chins, with serpent scales covering their limbs instead of hoof or foot. Some had the form of snake tails at the base of their legs. Yet, were we not the gods? Had we not defeated the Titans? Hence, we threw caution to the wind and charged them head-on. Athena and Nike were my charioteers, and as we sailed across the skies, I threw bolt after lightning bolt down amongst them. Each struck and crackled down their bodies, burning their hair, shattering their very bones within their skin. And my ire was not the most hot that day, for Poseidon and Ares, were of a mind to show their skill, their power. Both went against the giants as though it was a game. They cut and hewed and brought down many an adversary. My wife led the other flank. Here I cast darts and boiled stones at all within her view. She burst the eye of many an enemy with those slithers of stone. The combined powers of the gods all unleashed as one. We fought them not merely with stone and sword, but with spell and chant and power also. All of us were like flies assailing mountains. They were so huge, so potent. And when they finally caught a god or goddess with their clubs or fists, the damage done was so much as to force those struck from the battle for aid. Yet, when the dusk came, when the day was over, we had done naught, nothing. For with each crippling strike, each bolt or blast, each time they went down, they would not expire, they would not die. They seemed to gain power from the earth itself, for their grievous wounds would knit, their blood would stop flowing, and their bodies would repair. And up again they got, more bitter and emboldened by every rising. As the light of Helios faded from the skies, it was near over. They had risen again and again, and our number shrunk again and again. In the dark their size was a boon. We needed to see them to avoid their blows. So exhausted, bloodied and broken, we took more and more direct hits. More of us fell. Not dead, but smashed beyond continued conflict. Then, as the Gigantes closed around those standing, myself, Ares, Athena, Poseidon, Demeter, Hera, and more, but not enough more, we heard a terrible braying, a sound as if from Tartarus itself. It resounded from the walls of every hill and mountain, and the giants became afeared. And as it approached and grew to cacophony levels, the Gigantes took to heel and ran. The earth shook with the pounding of their feet. The mountains shook. It was then that we saw what had made this rampant cacophony. And on a braying donkey came Silanus, a mortal swaying in his saddle, for he was deeply in his cups. And there was no small wonder why, for my son, the lord of grape and vine, Dionysus, lay on the rump of the donkey asleep in his inebriation. For Silanus had brought his pupil, my son, to assist us in this war. The mentor, Silenus, then unceremoniously dropped Dionysus from the back of his steed. And then, he rushed off to give chase to the Gigantes. The drunk mortal and her donkey continued their flight, and this same mortal had saved us all. In another time, I would have laughed until I cried. Yet, there was no time. We scrambled back up to the slopes of our defences, hefting our injured with us. The night that followed was dour. No feasting, many being ministered to by Hestia and Demeter and Apollo. The Gigantes would return on the morrow, and we would need to be ready. And the fighting went on all day, every day, with more and more of us being cycled from tragically injured to back to battle. For we could heal swiftly, are we not gods? Yet it expended our godly mana, our power to do so. When we were forced to retire again and again, the giants jeered and then threw insults at us as we did so. But they did not follow us. I had secretly dreaded giving the order to withdraw, for I envisaged them chasing us up into our own place of power and crushing us. I had planned for this, of course. Hephaestus had prepared many a trip and trap, should they be so brazen. Yet, thankfully, they did not. I had seen the Gigantes slain by Kronos during the Titanomachy. Did he have some power? I do not know. For when he struck them, they did not rise. Perhaps it was the weapon gifted to him by Gaia, the one he used to castrate and slay his own sire, Uranus. Yet, somehow, I did not think this was the case. I would be proven right over the next days, for I did come back down again and again, and I brought this blade, this adamantine sickle with me. Even when I used this oldest of all weapons on them, the Gigantes, even then, they rose again. As we met them day after day, we got to know their strikes and blows, but they too got to know how we would evade them. Hence, the confrontations were faster and faster in their conclusions, and we were not having the better of the matter. The Gigantes were unkillable. We were losing.
I had to be strong. I wanted to weep for what I had done. The butchery was terrible. The battles I unleashed, I caused. But it was happening. With each day, each defeat, Zeus was eroding. His power and that of his court, it was draining away. The constant bombardment, the constant clash of arms. It was terrible to see them beaten so badly. Yet every morn they came back. Some would be missing from the line for a time, but they returned. In all of this, I had felt immune to the powers arrayed. I had never feared for my existence. I was not on the plains striking blows myself. I sat above, or watched on from below is more accurate. I could not see all that was happening in Olympus. I had no Metis inside my enemy's camp to keep me abreast, and so I did not witness the meeting that I learnt of later. For Zeus was not to be taken lightly. For he was not just the son of Rhea and Kronos anymore. He was fighting my sons on the field all day, every day. Then, while others recovered, he worked. He planned and plotted, directing Hephaestus to greater toil, to strengthen the defences, to forge weapons of his imagining. I had predicted this, of course. But I was blind to his movements by night. He must have consulted many, for soon the secret was found, and he took away my son's advantage. And then things changed.
Desperation is the mother of invention, something that will oft be quoted, I am sure, but it always strikes true. For I was indeed desperate. Enough so to enter a pact with the Moray, the Fates. I went to them, the Seeing Three, and made my bargain with them. They would fight for me, but they would also divulge that which they had seen. Alas, in many a recounting, it is the revelation that my son, Heracles, is all that I needed, a mortal man to assist my war. Now, things would certainly have gone better had I Hercules on my side then. He had not yet been born. A poetic fancy I permit, for it elevates my own son. Yet he was not present. He is not what broke the stalemate we were losing. It was revelation. For the grandmother had forced to grow a herb of surpassing potence, akin to ambrosia and golden apple in its working. It enhanced the powers of the Gigantes. This is the reason that they could rise again and again. Yet all things have their cost. All power has its laws and limits, and the fates told me of its conditions. Yes, the Gigantes were unkillable, but only whilst they stood on the land of their birth. Only if they fought us on their terms. Yet the herb and the drug was so potent, it needed to be removed so no lasting chance of eradicating this one foil could be bred into their bones over the years. They consumed it daily, so we acted with alacrity. The very next morn, I bade Helios to shine down where it did grow, and his scorching beams of sunlight parched them. I hurled down a lightning bolt, and the crop was consumed in fires. The next battle would be our last. We knew how to end them now.
I was undone. The arbor where I grew the vine of power, it burned, and the Olympians arrayed themselves on their walls, preparing to come down to meet my sons, my Gigantes. I would not take form, I could not personify myself, for if I were dealt a mortal wound, I would not leave my sons in a war unwinnable. I then performed my gambit. The Olympians had moved the augmenting herb, yet my sons were still mighty. They could finish this. Hence, I filled their minds with horrors and evil, filled them to the brim with my rage. They went berserk. And then, I tore down the defences of Mount Olympus. During the Gigantomachy, it was I who cast the runes and dweemers, enchantments and curses on this mountain. It was these that formed the basis of later layers, but Zeus had thought he expunged all of my lines on his home. Alas, he was terribly mistaken, for I set forth my power. I shook the mountain as easily as shrugging my shoulders. I tore down every scrap of protection they had, opened rents in their walls and parapets, and in one last chaotic charge, the Gigantes went to end the war.
On the Gigantes came, but this time we were confident. More so even than that first eye-opening battle. For now, we knew how to defeat them. We knew how they could be killed. Before the revelation of the power given unto them by Gaia, we would have huddled on Olympus preparing for the end. Yet, as the Gigantes reached the base of our mount, and for the very first time ascended its slopes, we were not callow or shivering whelps. We were the gods of the universe, preparing to repel the last gasp of a dying hegemony. This would be the end of the Gigantomachy proper, the defeat of Gaia, and this golden new age of our abject rule was about to begin. We needed only to grasp it. As I looked at those behind me, I grinned to myself. There, swift Hermes had brought the helm of Hades, his caduceus held ready to strike around him. Athena was bedecked in her finest panoply of war, the shield and spear of her power glowing. Ares was attired in his finest armor, his swiftest and sharpest blades. Poseidon stood atop a pillar of water, trident in hand. The golden twins Artemis and Apollo with their bows, and on it went. Demeter, Hera, Leto, Hecate, Dionysus, Hephaestus, Rhea, and the Titanesses. Even the three Morae, the Fates, were stood with heavy clubs in their hands, all of the power of Olympus, all of my court stood, all but Hades and his. For they still guarded for any sly movements from Gaia towards the Gigantomachy, and we did not merely await their advent. As I raised my lightning bolt into the skies, I bellowed. No intention given bar the basest of instinct. It was a bellow of rage and a call to revenge. This ends today. And with that, we charged down at the Gigantes.
My sons, I could not believe what I witnessed. The gods, they were not beaten. They were not as I had predicted. With new vim and vigour, with wrath, they flew into my sons. The Gigantes fought well. They fought hard. They did the best they could. But the sheer rage of the immortal Olympians was a thing of dread. Hermes took flight so fast he was invisible. Only I could see him, not my sons. He harassed and goaded them with strikes from his caduceus. His blows did not cripple or kill, but they distracted and unbalanced. And while he played the buzzing bee, the Olympians took down my sons in groups. Apollo and Artemis shot Ephialtes in one eye after the other, blinding him. The three Morae charged Agrias, and with their clubs they broke his serpentine legs. He was helpless before them. Hecate evaded Clytius, drawing him further and further from the soils of his birth. And soon this was repeated across the battlefield. Zeus and Hera were at its centre. It seemed as if Zeus was almost using Hera as bait, for my Gigantes were still of male kind. They saw her beauty and would ravish her, ignoring the battle in their lust. Yet Zeus was there, and he flew down and shot bolt after bolt into Porphyrion, one of the greatest of the Gigantes. Yet the two broke him. Then, like the others, they dragged the giants from their land. The Gigantes could see what was happening, and they tried to run. This only made the last stage of the battle a slaughter, for they were easy pickings now their own rage had turned to ice, and the Olympians dragged my sons from the land which gave them protection. And there, in the seas, in the plains of nearby countries, they slew my sons. The Gigantes were bested and oft beheaded, some trapped under mountains, but nearly all slain. And it was over. My sons. There would always be more. But these, my most loyal and powerful sons, they were all dead. And Zeus, he had won.
Night falls, and the victory seems complete. We gods all gather on Mount Olympus again, but this time in celebration. The feasting and frolics are loud and brash, but I find myself tiring of it all. As so often, I walk to the heights of the mount and look out, and, as usual, she finds me, my hearer. She can feel my discomfort. She has a playful look as she intones,
Lord of the skies, Lord of the earth, Lord of the stars, why so melancholy?
because It is not over.
How so, my king, my husband?
She is not here, my wife. Gaia has not bent the knee.
Which means she has not seen the truth. Petulance.
Aye, perhaps. Or perhaps she has one last throw of the dice. Something. Hera, I do not know what she will do.
Fear not, my love, for no matter what she throws at us, we shall face it together.
I smile at her. A warm and deep smile, the one I reserve just for her. Thank you, my queen, my wife. I can only hope that it is enough. Coming next time, Typhon and the end of the Gigantomachy.